Welcome to the Life Together podcast. My name is Collie Brandon. I have the opportunity to serve here at the Chapel in Green as the director of local outreach, amongst other things. And we've got a special guest here today, our lead pastor, Pastor Mike Castelli. So I'm really excited for this interview. It's going to be, I really think, eye opening, especially for those who don't know Pastor Mike and his story, his testimony, how the Lord has worked in his life throughout the years. So, Pastor Mike, thankful for you to join us and
Yeah,
take some time out of your busy
you
schedule.
bet. Good to be here.
So, we are going to hear kind of your testimony and how the Lord has worked in your life, but we've got to start kind of at the beginning. So, uh, what can you tell us about your family life growing up, where you're from, your parents, siblings, all that cool stuff?
Yeah, so we born and raised in this area, but my father was born and raised in Sicily.
Okay.
So he was a little boy during the war,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you remember World War II, Italy started on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up allies with the U.S. and the Allies,
Mm-hmm.
but they originally started aligned with Hitler
Yes.
and Mussolini. So
Mhm.
Mussolini was the head of Italy at that point, and so my father lost his father. He actually was one of Mussolini's equivalent to what there were the brown shirts of Hitler and the black shirts of Mussolini.
Okay.
So I think the last time my dad said he saw his dad was when he left for war at he was like 3 years old, 4 years
Mhm.
old, 5 years old, something like that. And so he was, he got captured by the Russians and died in a Russian concentration camp. So
Wow.
my dad grew up there with his sister,
Mhm.
and eventually his mom remarried and married a man with U.S. citizenship. But my dad stayed over in Sicily with his sister until he was like 17, and then came to this country as an adult.
Okay.
And then my mother's side of the family, they were a couple years in this country, but from Calabrese, from southern Italy.
Mhm.
So we grew up in a very Italian, kind of Roman Catholic Italian cultural
Mhm.
family. If you've seen my big fat Greek wedding, that was us on
Yes.
the Italian side, kind of
Yes.
thing. So I didn't, that was everything we did.
Mhm.
So kind of born and raised in this area. So I was first generation on my dad's side,
Mhm.
and so yeah, we were local, and so I grew up in this area, and had that Roman Catholic background.
Mhm.
I would say for me and my family, it was pretty nominal. We were serious at times, but it wasn't really in our hearts, so to say. It was a little more just kind of going through the motions. We
Yeah.
weren't really involved much beyond, a Sunday obligation. And then eventually, that kind of wore out as I went through confirmation, and then basically kind of punched out of church pretty much in high
Mhm.
school. So, but had a brother, older brother, younger sister, and we were all close in age. So we went through school in close proximity,
Yeah.
and right not far from here, Coventry.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So Coventry Comet.
yeah.
Um, what did you do for fun growing up and as a teenager?
Yeah, so my brother and we were in a band since I can remember. We both started music lessons early.
Okay.
I remember maybe, I don't know, fourth grade, fifth grade.
Mhm.
I played percussion, drums, and my brother
Mhm.
was a guitarist, and we got in a band early on. So we played in a band all through even late middle school and then into high school. So that's what we did for fun. So
Okay.
I missed my senior prom. But we were playing. It
Okay.
was a gig, so
Yeah.
we were playing out that night. So we were playing in various local scenes, the bar scenes, and
Mhm.
some other things like that. All through high school. So music was kind of the thing outside of school that we always were involved in.
Okay.
And then I didn't even go to college when we graduated high school.
Mhm.
The band was doing well. We just stayed and playing in the band, thinking we were going to
Mhm.
be quote unquote, professional musicians. We
Yeah.
were professional musicians, but at some point things kind of broke up, and
Mhm.
that's what ended up landing me in at University of Akron. Thinking, well, what am I going to do now? Well,
Yeah.
I better go back to school and get a degree or something like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, very much so.
So when things ended with the band, did you and you went to the University of Akron, did you have an idea of like, okay, this is what I want to do? Or did you just kind of go in as a
Yeah.
general student
Yeah,
and
it was different. No, I did. I went explicitly into engineering.
okay.
So, but it wasn't because I had some grand love for, I just had done well in
Hmm.
mathematics and science, generally speaking, in high school and had a decent aptitude that way. So, and I
Yeah.
thought engineers made great money, right? So now I'm really, what's your focus?
Yeah.
I didn't have God in my life. My
Hmm.
focus was, I got to go get a job and I want to
Yes.
make good money. So I thought, wow, I'm going to go get an engineering degree. So
Hmm.
that's exactly what I did. So we started in engineering, and then I stayed on. Met my wife there, dated
Yes.
for many years, all through college.
Hmm.
Stayed on for my graduate work. She went off and got a job. She's a nurse,
Hmm.
and then that's eventually when the kind of doors opened up for me at NASA Lewis Research Center. Then now it's called NASA Glenn Research Center.
Yes. So you
Yeah.
so you got that job right out of
Yeah,
college,
yeah,
basically.
or even in it. So I
Okay.
was partially through my master's work, and I got a graduate fellowship up at
Hmm.
NASA, and then wrapped up my classes and then was working, kind of finishing things up while I was working at NASA at the same time. So yeah, it was a nice blend without having to stop or go find another job somewhere. So
Yeah.
one of the professors, an adjunct professor, was also an adjunct researcher at NASA. So there was a connection, and he was one of my professors, and it was a nice opportunity to go and do a graduate fellowship, and then they ended up hiring me,
Okay.
and so I started there in May of '80. I want to say May of '88.
Okay.
Yeah, so a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you start the job there. You're working as a research engineer,
research
correct?
engineer. Yeah,
Um, explain to us just a little bit, just to
yeah,
in layman's terms, if you can,
yeah.
what did that job entail?
Yeah, so I mean, engineering can go, a million different ways.
Hmm.
Obviously, electrical, chemical, structural, civil, mechanical. So my job, my undergrad and graduate work was in the area of engineering mechanics, structural engineering, and mechanics of materials. And so my job was to research and work on materials for predominantly engines, propulsion systems.
Okay.
So did some work on materials for rocket engines and lots of materials and structures for jet engines. Did
Hmm.
a lot of work with jet engine manufacturers, and so most of it. Some other applications of trying to advance. We were always working on. So it wasn't a typical engineering position. It
Hmm.
was more of a research scientist position. We
Hmm.
were always working on stuff that really probably wasn't going to see maturity for at least 10, 15, 20, 25 years in some cases. So
Yeah.
we always laughed and said it wasn't the leading edge of technology, it was the bleeding edge of
Hmm.
technology. So this was the stuff that was expensive to do
Yeah.
that might not pan out. Like you work on it to get it inside an engine,
Hmm.
and it may never happen. So got to work on some of the X planes and the experimental planes that NASA would periodically get involved with the Air Force and different projects like that. So it was a
Yeah.
great job, a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Enjoyed it a whole bunch. So spent a total of 12 years
Wow.
working there up at NASA.
So you're married,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're working at
Yep.
NASA. You have this nominal kind of Roman Catholic
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
Um, were you thinking at all about the things of God or things of or your faith at all as you were began working there? Or
Yeah. Not so much. I mean, so I would always say it this way. I think my science drove me to. I say this for honest. No, I want to be careful with that. But I honestly think if you're open and sincere with your science,
Mhm.
it will drive you to the idea of a God.
Mhm.
It drives you to the reality that there must be a God.
Yeah.
So true atheists, the people who say there is no God, those still are relatively few and far between. There are a lot of agnostics, people who aren't sure. I don't
Mhm.
have enough information to decide whether there is a God or isn't a God.
Mhm.
But I always thought, if you're a true scientist, things were just so
Yeah.
exact, particularly in the area of physics, or astrophysics, and you start studying the cosmos a little bit. NASA, while my job wasn't directly related to uh, anything that was cosmic, so to
Mhm.
say, that was always a fun field to dig into because it was NASA and obviously space work as well as aeronautics
Mhm.
kind of work. But I really wasn't. I was an atheist, but I really wasn't a person of faith. So it
Yeah.
just kind of floated along. I got married in a church. Of course, that was more of a cultural thing.
Mhm.
And my wife Terry, she grew up Methodist. She had accepted Jesus
Mhm.
as a young lady, but then college and just not really. And then meeting me, I didn't have any faith at all.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a good thing. If anything, I pulled her in the wrong direction. But we got married in a Roman Catholic church
Mhm.
in downtown Akron, and then at the same time, I'm already working up at NASA at that point, and so yeah, it wasn't really part of my. I don't think we really went to church that
Yeah.
much. Maybe we might have popped in, but it wasn't anything that was. Yeah, again, it would have been more just kind of going through the motions. So
Mhm.
so it really wasn't a part of my life until a guy that I work with kind of befriended me. We did a lot of research together, did a lot of publishing together, and we grew close. And he started to share some things that really challenged and
Mm.
and made me ask some good questions. He was asking good questions because
Yeah.
he was a believer, and he we had that mutual respect for one another,
Mhm.
and he just kind of pushed the right buttons, if you want to
Yeah.
say. And then I guess God kind of did the rest at that
Mhm.
point. So
So, during that process, and you may or may not remember like the exact time period or whatever, but when you think about when you can look back now and see like, okay, this guy was witnessing to
yeah,
me,
yeah.
and during this time, like, what was the kind of time period from when he began to really kind of ask you some of those questions to when you made a decision to follow
Yeah,
Christ?
probably started work up there in '88, May of '88, and probably I got to know him a little bit, in the coming year. So
Mhm.
by the time I got married in '89, and so he started. So he's actually did a reading in my wedding,
Okay.
which was so we were already we were kind of engaging
Yeah.
on certain things, but he started asking questions pretty quick. So probably through the course of that year, through '89, and then eventually asked me, questions that kind of are
Mhm.
troubling in the end. If you don't, if you do believe there's a God and you do believe there's something after this life, it's not just this. You're not just a materialist, meaning you have a soul, you have a
Mhm.
spirit, and something happens to your spirit after this life. And so then you engage the idea of heaven and hell, of course, and God, and what is he going to do? So those are the kinds of questions he was asking. And so the door was already open because I knew enough about Christianity
Mhm.
from my Roman Catholicism, but just superficially so. And it was always kind of confusing and convoluted in my mind.
Mhm.
But he started asking me about heaven and hell. So if you die, what's going to happen then? And it's like at that point, you're like, okay, well, I'm a good guy. I'm
Yeah.
not a bad guy. I mean, it's bad guys go to hell. So
Mhm.
I must be going to heaven.
Mhm.
So, and then he start probing, right?
Mhm.
This is one lunch after another lunch after we'd go to lunch together because they had a compound, on the base up
Yeah.
there at NASA Glen. There's a cafeteria, lunchroom, and we'd go to lunch together and then walk back to the building that we were working out of.
Mhm.
This goes on for months and months and months. And so, he got to the point of saying, okay, well, how good you got to be.
Yeah.
You say you're not a bad guy. So
Mhm.
meanwhile, I didn't know this. So he's got people praying
Mhm.
in the background. That he knew from church. Hey,
Yes.
I'm witnessing to this pagan guy at work.
Mhm.
Pray for him.
Yeah.
And so that was funny. I laugh about that now, but those prayers worked.
Yes.
God worked. And so he asked me the right questions and then invited me to a Bible study.
Mhm.
And I thought, he's a great guy. I love him. Still keep in touch with Steve to this day. So me, him, and one other guy, Todd McKinney.
Okay.
Yeah, me, Steve, and Todd. So Todd
Wow.
was a young lawyer at the time.
Yeah.
Steve, here we are, two research engineers at
Mhm.
NASA and a lawyer. I always smile and say, "Wow, that was a dynamic Bible study." You
Yes.
got not exactly right. So we're just walking through Romans,
Yeah.
and I'm reading and wow, this I've never really not really read the Bible before,
Mhm.
and so then we get to the point where we look at chapter 10, and you have that wonderful terrible passage
Yes.
like hey, this is the deal here. Confess with your mouth Jesus Lord, believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, and you'll be saved.
Mhm.
And I thought, this is something I want. It can't be this easy,
Yeah.
because the background and almost a superficial connection to the Christian faith, even on the
Mhm.
Roman Catholic side. There were many things you had to go through.
Mhm.
And then in the end, probably spend a good chunk of time in purgatory before if you were going to make it to
Yeah.
heaven. So I remember praying that prayer uh, alone in a room, me and
Mhm.
my dog. I always laughed. My dog was there with me. And that was somewhere around 1990 that year. I don't
Mhm.
even know. I didn't learn until later. You're supposed to write that date down, but I don't.
Yes. Well.
For me, it was like, and it worked, and it just
Mhm.
as it ended up, we both lived in the Akron area, Steve and I, and so we had carpooled, and we worked all the way up by the airport,
Yeah.
where NASA Glenn is at. So we had almost an hour ride,
Mhm.
50-minute ride, one way.
Mhm.
So here we go. Now he's discipling me in the midst of this ride back and forth to work.
Yes.
I spent way more time with him, and then we put in a 9-10 hour day or however long we
Mhm.
were, and then drive another 45 an hour to get
Mhm.
home. And sometimes we'd get home and we'd be in such a passionate discussion about scripture or God or something.
Yeah.
We'd sit in the driveway for another half an hour. Terry'd
Mhm.
peek out the window and go, "Well, I think he's home, but he's still sitting in
Yes.
the driveway after being in the car for an hour." They're sitting in the driveway. So it was great because there was this discipleship process. And then as
Mhm.
I grew, it was kind of the iron sharpening iron. And so it
Mhm.
was a beautiful thing. And so I grew in my faith through those years. That's how I ended up attending the chapel. That's where he went to
Mhm.
church. And so eventually he invited me uh, to attend church, and I kind of got connected to the chapel that way
Yeah.
early on. So,
So you've made a decision to follow Christ. Um, did you guys have kids yet,
yeah,
or?
so though our we have two now.
Mhm.
So shortly thereafter, so my
Okay.
daughter was born in '94,
Okay.
and then Joseph, my son, was born in '96.
Okay.
So it was all happening at that same
Yes.
time. Like I'm new in my faith, and then
Mhm.
we were starting a young family, and so all that was just kind of just blossoming. All
Yeah.
those early years, of my faith during my time when I was working at NASA.
So you're working at NASA.
Yeah,
You guys your family's growing.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I've always kind of been curious. I know, I know some of your story, but um, how were you engaging at the chapel, like as far as serving and Bible stuff or ABFs or Bible studies and things like that? How as the Lord was growing you during that time period, you're a new believer,
yeah.
what were you doing at the
Yeah,
chapel?
so it hit me like a ton of bricks, as the saying goes.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to faith, it was so serious, so real
Mm-hmm.
for me that I really had this sense of, wow, here I am, whatever it was, 27, 28 years old,
Yeah.
you know, uh, all my life. This has been, I didn't do anything with this. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to quote unquote catch up.
Yeah.
So I was pretty voracious in the sense of reading the Bible. I went at it. I
Mm-hmm.
started to read and study, and got involved with volunteering pretty quick. So
Yeah.
immediately, I probably 2 3 years in to my faith, I started taking classes from Moody Bible Institute
Okay.
to work on a degree.
Mhm.
I wanted that,
Mhm.
just set the engineering stuff because
Mhm.
in the midst of PhD work, kind of like I don't want to do that anymore. I
Yeah.
want to do this. So well before I ever left NASA, I had a degree from Moody, and
Mhm.
I'd already started my graduate work
Mhm.
while I was still at NASA in theology. So I began to volunteer pretty quick. I wanted to be involved.
Mhm.
I wanted to teach, and I wasn't teaching right away, but serving in different capacities.
Yeah.
I started teaching, ushering, and teaching kids. Like my
Mhm.
first teaching engagement was fourth and fifth graders,
Yeah.
and then I advanced to second graders
Mhm.
actually. So it seemed to me I connected a little better with the second graders than
Yeah.
I did the fourth and fifth graders. But so that was a great opportunity for me
Mhm.
to get into the Word of God, and share it even
Yeah.
with the children,
Yep.
and that was encouraging.
Mhm.
And Terry started work nursery stuff and different kids opportunities, and before long, I was starting to teach periodically in my community group, the
Mhm.
ABFs, about Bible Fellowship. We attended one of those, and I ended up being the teacher. And one of our teacher was hanging up the guns. He
Mhm.
had served in that capacity for many years, and we went kind of without a teacher, kind of just passed it around for a while,
Mhm.
and then, with enough arm twisting, I, I, okay,
Yeah.
fine, I'll do it. And so, but I loved it, and I really felt like God had given me a certain measure of aptitude that way
Mhm.
to teach. So, and that's a part of my job was publishing and presenting research. So that was a regular part of the job.
Mhm.
You do your research, you write it up, and publish it, and then you'd go to various conferences and you present it. So
Yeah.
it's funny, maybe God was even preparing me to
Mhm.
for some kind of a proclaiming something or other. And
Yeah.
in that case, it was science. In this case, I because I kind of devoured the Bible right away and wanted to learn. I wanted to learn, and so I'm doing stuff, in formal classes, but I'm
Mhm.
also studying on my own, trying to learn a little bit of the languages and different things, just trying to
Mhm.
catch that stuff on your own, and then being involved. I teach on Wednesday nights constantly. Of course, I love classes like creation, evolution.
Yeah.
That was right up my alley
Mhm.
because of my science background. So I studied that up pretty well. I love the apologetic stuff,
Mhm.
resurrection, and how would you make a case for Christianity, and why do we hold this as so true?
Mhm.
And so it was kind of natural. Most of my volunteering was in those kinds of areas,
Yeah.
teaching, and then eventually in the adult area,
Mhm.
teaching, different ABF groups and electives and classes like that. So I loved it. So by the time an opening came that I thought, okay, I'm going to leave NASA one day, I thought, it was very personal in the sense that as Steve and I used to talk about
Yeah.
it. I'm thinking I was there a total of 12 years. Probably my last couple years, I thought I think I think I'm leaving here,
Mhm.
which was crazy. It's like the best job in the world.
Yeah.
If you're a research engineer or a research scientist, you couldn't be in a better spot. I mean, it was a
Mhm.
great job. Yeah, you had access. You worked with the best of the best, literally around the world. Professors in the U.S. and
Mhm.
overseas, and but to feel like, okay, this is not it. That was kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like, why? People would ask, "What you're doing? What?" And then eventually, when I said I was leaving, you're gonna do what? The confusion is like, "Are you
Mhm.
sure?" And I wasn't sure.
Mhm.
I felt like I needed to do something else, and it needed to be involved explicitly with a church or God's word. I didn't have in mind pastoral ministry exactly,
Mhm.
because when I first took a position at the chapel, it was administrative.
Yeah.
It was, more the business end.
Mhm.
And part of it was building this building, getting
Mhm.
this building built, the green campus at the time. And so, but it was a very personal kind of God moving me, knowing that I was gonna. He created a discontentment
Yeah.
on the one side and a longing to do something else on the other.
Mhm.
And so it took about 2 years to kind of pray it through, maybe a little bit longer, because it had to be me and Terry, right, and our
Yes.
family. I wasn't just me; it
Mhm.
was all of us. I'm gonna go from doing this, research engineer, to doing this, a church administrative guy, and then eventually becoming a pastor, and then
Mhm.
on and on. So that was a big change. So it did take a little while to think it through and pray
Yeah.
it through, and yeah. But I felt like God clearly gave me the right markings and signs, and
Mhm.
the right encounters with people, and even the easy for me. I mean, administrative stuff is not. You did that as part of your research,
Yeah.
so that was a nice ease in to the pastoral theology side of things.
So, what were those early kind of years of ministry like? Did you, because like you said, you started out kind of on the administrative side,
Yeah.
but did you feel almost immediately like, all right, Lord, this was the right, thank you, this was the right decision? Um, and that's interesting because I just think of you as a lead pastor, so I'm kind of curious, what was it like for you as you started working at the chapel? It's obviously it's a very different environment than NASA. What was that like?
Yeah, it was very different. It's even different than what you have this grand uh, thing in mind.
Hmm.
Oh, this is what it's going to be like. Oh, you get to do a job where everything you get to
Yeah.
do Bible and this and that and everything. And there was that part that was really good. But like anything else, Chapel's was a big organization.
Hmm.
On the administrative side, a lot of moving parts, a lot of departments for integrating and doing things together. I did a lot of the business stuff early on.
Hmm.
Again, integral involvement with building. Here we are, on 80 acres of
Yeah.
land, 140,000 square foot of building,
Hmm.
and kind of overseeing that whole project while watching over the administrative functions. So it was different. It
Hmm.
was it was it was hard in some ways, and in other ways, I knew I still, because I had been teaching for a long time, I was still teaching an ABF, doing teaching
Yeah.
classes. So that part of my ministry was always active, even though I was doing predominantly administration. So, and then I got licensed pretty quick as a pastor because I already had the schoolwork and
Hmm.
had been teaching for a while. And then slowly, the Pastor Newt gave me a shot at a sermon.
Hmm.
My first year on staff, and I wasn't even a pastor yet. I was like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
It was a Sunday night one time, and I think it was in Romans, in fact, or maybe Acts 17. Paul at the Areopagus,
Hmm.
and he's in Athens, and anyway, so and I loved it. So
Yeah.
it was just a matter of kind of working that through and God
Hmm.
moving me through. But working, it's a grand delusion to think, wow, I'm working at a church, everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
People are still people.
Yes.
We have a clear calling and a clear mission, and the
Hmm.
motive hopefully is much different than in the marketplace. But we still have struggles, and
Yeah.
people still have challenges, and you still the challenge with the church is people,
Yes.
you included, me
Yes.
included, right? So it was good though. I mean, there was an affirmation. I felt like, especially with the building of Green and
Hmm.
then the opening of Green, that I felt like that God had wanted me here.
Hmm.
We actually moved to Green before we ever started work on this. So
Yeah.
even that had a bit of foreordained kind of a feel to it. So um, because Terry grew up not far from here
Hmm.
in Uniontown,
Hmm.
so this area, and my parents were over in Coventry, her parents were in Uniontown, and it was a great in between. Lo and behold, we were going to build a church here.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all sweet. That process wasn't easy.
Hmm.
At first, there was a lot of tensions with it being a big church,
Hmm.
and a lot of folks in the immediate neighborhood that were nervous and at times frustrated and did
Hmm.
not want a big church in their backyard.
Hmm.
So it was a little bit of a struggle at first, and some, uh, you know, yeah, some tension points. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I would periodically have a neighbor call me and say, "You're ruining my life." I
Mm.
remember being on the phone with one lady, and she was just broken in tears.
Mhm.
She really thought that this church was going to mess her neighborhood up,
Mm.
and so she freely expressed it, and I remember hanging the phone up and telling someone afterward, "I just been told I'm ruining someone's life."
Mm.
All those years as an engineer,
Yeah.
nobody ever told that to me. Now I'm in ministry
Yes.
and I'm ruining someone's life. So talk about, an odd paradox.
Yeah.
So um, in the end, I would say, praise God, it worked out well.
Mhm.
The tensions were eventually alleviated, fear of traffic and fear of, whatever, a church does that maybe a neighborhood might not want. Those things dissipated over the years,
Mhm.
early years, and we end up being a wonderful part of the community. So from
Yeah.
that side, the ministry was sweet.
Mhm.
We had the complications of multiple campuses, so chapel was always complicated that way.
Mhm.
Before we decided to go independent, we were
Yes.
up to 7 campuses. And that's a lot of work to
Mhm.
kind of stitch things together and keep it all, moving right. So it has its hard parts too,
Yes.
but the sweet part was always, I think the people,
Yes.
honestly, were always good. It was
Mhm.
always a joy to be able to, engage and be
Mhm.
encouraged and encourage and challenge and build up, and
Yeah.
those things were the sweet part of it. So, but I think God affirmed it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, eventually, and it's like, okay, I think I'm meant to be here.
Yes.
And I'm still thinking through that now after 25 plus years. I'm still
Yeah.
thinking that one through. Am I supposed to be here? Too late at this point, right?
Yeah.
So, no, it's been good. It's had its challenges
Mhm.
along the way, but clearly it's been good.
So, another question I've got is, um, so you got that first opportunity to preach on a Sunday evening. When did you start preaching on a regular basis?
So as soon as Green opened, Green opened
Mhm.
in '03. So now
Mhm.
you have 2 pulpits, and the
Yeah.
technology between the video casting was just not there yet.
Yeah.
And so we tried it a few times, but it was not good.
Mhm.
Just the technology wasn't good. The image on the screen, and I think if you take a church that was used to live preaching and you attempt to transition them, to a video kind of
Yes.
an approach, it wasn't welcomed with open arms, so to
Mhm.
say. So there was a lot of frustration, I think, and we didn't use it a bunch, periodically, and honestly, less and less
Yeah.
as we moved along. So now you've got 2 pulpits, and if you're going to fill them both live, then I jumped into loop. I
Mhm.
was one of the guys that was a kind of a regular rotation,
Yeah.
because we would have the senior pastor, Newt, at the time,
Mhm.
would be at one spot, and then somebody would be filling the pulpit at another. So
Yeah.
being in Green, I ended up doing a little more at Green, and
Mhm.
eventually became campus pastor here in 2005. So
Okay.
2 years into our opening,
Mhm.
um, I became the campus pastor here, and then the preaching role really picked up at that point, and it waned and waxed as
Mhm.
we we had other senior pastors come along, but always a little more here at Green than
Yeah.
at Akron, though we would shuffle back and forth on a pretty
Mhm.
regular basis.
Okay.
But it got to be to where God had, I think, blessed
Mhm.
the fruitfulness of that particular aspect of ministry,
Yeah.
and it just felt like it was the thing I ought to be doing.
Yeah.
It was good.
So, this question, I think it's going to be for all the folks watching or listening to this, and that's like, what does it look like for you to typically like to prepare a sermon? The folks that are sitting there wondering, like, man, how do you do that? What does your week look like when you prepare a sermon?
Yeah, and I think everybody does this different.
Mm-hmm.
So different guys do it differently. So I tried to take an initial approach where I take pretty detailed notes up with me,
Yeah.
because that was the norm. You have notes, you go up there, and I don't know, I so enjoy being a bit more free
Mhm.
as opposed to being married to a set of notes.
Yeah.
So this will get into answering the question of preparation. I think my preparation is a little heavier
Mhm.
because I don't take a ton of notes up with
Yeah.
me. So I started to put just sticky notes in my Bible. Okay,
Mhm.
okay, right next to the text. Okay, you got to say this, or I want to remember this, or
Mhm.
so. And then that kind of morphed into a little bit of the way I like to prepare. So I usually spend about 25 hours
Mhm.
on an average Sunday sermon that's supposed to last 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a lot of time, but because I want to know it, I don't memorize it, but
Mhm.
I want to master it
Yes.
is the way to think about it.
Mhm.
You don't memorize it because then for me, it would become a little more wooden.
Mhm.
But you master your flow, how you piece together. Here's my engineering, right? So if you're going to write an engineering paper, you have to have a nice, good abstract. But you would
Mhm.
usually do the abstract after it was done and over with, right?
Yeah.
So because then it's a synopsis of what you're going to tell them in the paper. But you better have when you're dealing with scientific minds, you better have an outline. You
Mhm.
better have an approach. You better take them from point A to point B to point C, and you better your conclusions. You better know where you're going if you're going to get there. So I think I tried to bring some of that, or by default, I brought that to
Mhm.
a style of sermon preparation and delivery. So I'll spend I don't know 6-7 hours just figuring my outline out.
Yes.
So my outline takes me like 6 to 7 hours
Mhm.
in a 10 verses or 5 verses, or funny enough this week 2 verses.
Yes.
I still spent 6 hours on an
Yeah.
outline with 2 verses. But if I have my outline, I always call that my skeleton. I
Yes.
have that in
Mhm.
place. Then I can start hanging the flesh on the bones,
Yeah.
and then kind of letting God work the process through.
Mhm.
So I'll prep, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 pages of text,
Mhm.
typed text,
Yeah.
which is my sermon, but I don't take any of that up with me.
Yes.
So at that point, I'm studying it and I know it. Get up early on Sunday
Mhm.
morning, study it one more time, make
Yep.
sure I have any little notes I'm going to take with me,
Mhm.
all stitched in there, and
Mhm.
and uh, and then I'm ready to roll. So it's a long process, and I feel like I'm an old dog, and I can't learn a new trick
Mhm.
in terms of preparation. I'm stuck in that mode.
Yes.
So I've had people, why do you get up that early on Sunday? Why would you
Mhm.
do it that way? Just do more on Friday, so
Yeah.
you don't have to mess. And it's like, I'm comfortable. This is like an old shoe now,
Yes.
and this is what I do. This is how I do it. And yeah, it might not be the easiest way to do it, but it feels right and it feels good. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of my process.
Yeah.
So I love talking the stuff over, as you know, with staff.
Mhm.
Different ideas. What do you think? How would this play out in your area of ministry?
Mhm.
How would uh, someone who's doing outreach think of
Mhm.
this passage? So, and I love the Bible, the scriptural text. I don't necessarily like topics.
Yeah.
I love bringing topics to bear on the text when the
Mhm.
text brings them up. You want to talk about the topic of Israel? Great. Is it in the text? Awesome. There we go. That's
Yes.
easy.
Mhm.
So, but now you have to do topical stuff every now and then. But I'm not that smart. I'd
Mhm.
rather let God decide we're going to go through this. And so I
Yes.
love walking through books. I enjoy that a bunch,
Mhm.
walking through different books in the Bible. There's so much to learn, I think, again and again
Yeah.
through that process.
Yeah. Um, gonna switch gears real quick. What do you like to do for fun?
Wow. I'm pretty boring.
Mhm.
uh, I this is going to sound odd, but I love reading. If I
Yeah.
have time to read, and at times read stuff that isn't necessarily just reading
Mhm.
for an explicit thing that I'm doing. Like if I'm reading, if we're working through Romans,
Yeah.
okay, reading a book on Romans doesn't count.
Yes.
But if you're reading, I do enjoy reading historical theology,
Mhm.
the way it was understood, the way how things evolved. I love those kinds
Mhm.
of books and different texts that way.
Mhm.
So I enjoy reading. Family. I mean, we
Yes.
don't have a lot of time. Ministry consumes a good
Mhm.
chunk of your time, meeting with people, engaging people, doing different things of
Mhm.
ministry where people can be involved, and then prepping for the thing that you do. For me, it would primarily be pulpit.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of time left, so
Mhm.
so I do spend my fun activity would be hanging out with family.
Yes.
So that
Mhm.
weekends are, the parts that aren't consumed by doing stuff for the church
Mhm.
are I usually reserve for family
Yeah.
as much as possible. So
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm blessed because my kids decided to locate locally.
Mhm.
They live right down the street from me, both of them.
Yeah.
Both married now and down the street, and I my free time, what there is of it is
Mhm.
oftentimes I enjoy family stuff.
Yeah.
So reading and some family, and I like I'm a mad tinkerer. I love to I like little projects, right?
Mhm.
If I had more time, because that's I think the engineer in me.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot I don't tackle around my house.
Mhm.
Tearing stuff up, putting stuff in. The thing that limits me is time. But
Yes.
I do love tinkering around and fixing things and doing things
Mhm.
things like that are a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
So
Having been here at the chapel for 25 years, is there a verse or a passage that you go to when times have gotten rough for you?
yeah. I think there is one I hang
Mhm.
on to, and it is one of our most challenging moments. So we go through these senior leadership transitions, and
Mhm.
so this was back in 2012, 2013, and Pastor Paul Sartorelli had just left.
Mhm.
And so now we're back into, you know, um, working with leadership and figuring out where we're going
Mhm.
next and how all that process is going. And it was extra meetings and extra work and extra this and that. And I remember I drove up to Akron. I was sitting in my car and I was spent. I was tired,
Yeah.
and I put my Bible on my steering wheel. And I never advise this. Don't do this. Don't study the Bible this way. But
Yeah.
honestly, I just put it on my steering wheel and it fell open to Isaiah 43.
Mhm.
And for some reason, I looked down. I just was reading, and I looked down, and here's this passage, Isaiah 43. I want to say verse 18, and the next handful of verses, maybe through 21, and and um, and God's speaking there through Isaiah,
Mhm.
and he says, forget the things in the rear. Don't remember the things of the past.
Mhm.
Put them behind you. I'm doing something new, he says in the text. See, I'm making a way in the wilderness. I'm going to cause streams of water flowing in the desert,
Mm.
so that even the wild beasts will be able to drink.
Mhm.
And he says something, the jackal will drink, and the jackal and the ostrich will
Mhm.
drink. But I love that he starts out, I'm doing something new. Forget the former things.
Yeah.
Put them behind you. And we've had some seasons like that here at the church
Mhm.
where this one thing I do, Paul says now, Philippians, forgetting, it's a real
Mhm.
time verb, forgetting the past, forgetting what's behind and pressing on forward.
Mhm.
And that passage in Isaiah 43, where he says, I'm gonna make a way in the wilderness, streams of water flowing, so
Yes.
the jackal and the ostrich could drink, that my people would worship me. And it's like that was so much of. I go there regularly and I
Yeah.
read it and I think, okay, God's doing something new, and every day, every week, I want to think He's doing something new. I pray for
Yeah.
Him to do something new every week. So that's been like an
Mhm.
anchor, a passage that,
Mhm.
if you will, I didn't. I just stumbled on.
Yes.
Well, how we say those
Yeah.
things, right? So, yeah, I remember reading it. That was back in, I don't know,
Mhm.
2013, something like that. And I've hung on to that passage ever since, reading it.
Mhm.
And I keep watching him, say, okay, forget what's behind, and I'm going to do something new.
Yeah.
And we have been wonderfully and beautifully surprised
Mhm.
time and again by God
Mm.
doing new things
Yeah.
that He continues to, joyfully shock us with.
Mhm.
So I would say that here, He has joyfully shocked us with good new things
Yes.
on a regular basis.
Yes. So, as we finish up,
Yeah.
how can we, as a church, be praying for you and your family?
Yeah, it's as the old saying goes, it's not rocket science. Meaning the things that we desire to do,
Yes.
that God would use me to do
Mm-hmm.
them, well successfully on his register. So
Mm-hmm.
meaning that we would be able to, create continue to create an environment here where people are coming to know the Lord. They're being
Yes.
discipled. They're learning, they're sharing their lives with other people, discipling. And we are the chapel's always been wonderful at this. We
Mm-hmm.
reach outside of ourselves. You want to pray for me personally that
Mm-hmm.
that I would help lead a staff here to reach outside of our doors
Mm-hmm.
and reach people who don't know Christ.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just last Sunday, that God says, "I'm going to wrap this thing up when enough people come to know the Lord.
Yes.
When the
Mm-hmm.
fullness of the Gentiles hits, and then I'm going to call Israel."
Mm-hmm.
So I think of that fullness of the Gentiles, if you will. So we need to be busy reaching people. We need to
Yes.
be so pray that the doors open. Yeah, Paul asks for that prayer all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very real for me. So I think pray that the ministry here would be approved by God,
Mm-hmm.
in reaching people who don't know Him.
Yes.
And then in these days of tensions, how funny. Even walking to this time,
Mm-hmm.
here I am engaging a person in the hallway who's struggling with the a Christian approach to different things in our society, which
Yes.
clearly are not biblical, but
Mm-hmm.
we've let go of.
Yes.
So that's that last part of pray for me, that we would hold this
Mm-hmm.
appropriately firm, because it's so easy to wander. Churches are all over the map right now in terms of
Mm-hmm.
doctrine.
Yes.
Is Jesus still the only way? Are you really willing to say that in the 21st
Mm-hmm.
century, with the global awareness that you now have, that Jesus is the only way to the Father?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, not many churches want to say that, because it creates too much challenge and tension
Yeah.
and all kinds of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Social norms, social approaches, the exclusivity of Jesus, those things which are so important from a foundational standpoint of how we teach people about
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Um, there's a battle constantly. So prayer through that
Yes.
we would stand firm in a good
Mm-hmm.
way and not be odious, not be,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't stand those guys. They're rotten. They're
Yeah.
just, they're spiteful almost in their truth. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be spiteful in my truth. I just want to hold on to truth and proclaim it
Mm-hmm.
and watch and see what God does.
Yes.
Because I'm absolutely convinced that he's got to do something,
Yes.
and he does do something.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I get the pleasure of being able to look in the past and in the present now and watch him do things. So,
Yes.
so I think we're blessed here. So pray that blessing, which is a function of staying faithful to him,
Mm-hmm.
continues.
Yeah.
And so, and I think there are times when people are faithful to him and they still go through rocky times,
Yes.
tough times. So I'm not saying it's going to be great if we just stay faithful.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be great, but I prefer to stay faithful, of
Mm-hmm.
course. So reaching people who need to know Jesus and teaching them about Jesus in a
Yes.
way that isn't, twisted by our
Mm-hmm.
world or culture. That takes a lot of prayer,
Yes.
because it's easy to kind
Mm-hmm.
of get lost in that mess.
Mm-hmm.
So pray for me that way. And so in my family, God has blessed us
Yeah.
really well. So we're close, and we enjoy and have fun together,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's good. So
Good. Good. Well, thank you so much.
yeah,
I know how busy you
yeah.
are, so
Oh, this was good.
taking some time to talk with me and with us. And guys, you're gonna want to like, subscribe, and share. I think my kids told me to they watch a lot of YouTube, so I think that's what the YouTubers say. Like, subscribe, and share this podcast. We're so grateful to have you with us. And my prayer is that you'll listen to this, be equipped and encouraged by it, and be praying for Pastor Mike and his family. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye.
Bye.